Hello, my name is Umut Erel. I'm a sociologist at the Open University and I'm head of department in sociology. I'm really glad to be here today with some colleagues and students. And this is our first event, which is our Sociology Open Day event to give people who are considering to become students at the Open University and choose to study sociology an idea of what it is like to study at the Open University. Let's begin by introducing ourselves. Mark, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Newman. I'm a senior advisor in the student support team, the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences.
Kate?
Hello, I'm Kate, and I'm a student at the OU. I study psychology, so I've been studying for a couple of years now, but hello.
Thank you. Dinah?
Hello, I'm Dinah. I am a sociology student at the OU, and I've just completed my degree.
It's great. Congratulations, Dinah. And Ece?
Hi everyone, my name is Ece Kocabuçak. I am senior lecturer in sociology at the Open University.
Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian McGrail. I'm an associate lecturer at the Open University in sociology, which means I'm a group tutor, and so I'll be talking about that later.
Great. So we've prepared a presentation. I'll be starting, then I'll be passing on to Brian, who's going to talk about the role of associate lecturers, then passing on to Mark, who's going to tell you about the kind of support that's available to students, and then passing on to Dinah and Kate, who are going to share their perspective as Open University students with you. Sorry. So my presentation is going to be looking at what's special about studying sociology at the Open University. But before that, I'd like to start with just a very brief idea. Some of you will already have an idea about what sociology is, maybe through your studies at secondary school, sixth form, but still it could be useful to give a quick summary. So overall, sociology is the study of how people shape the world that they live in, but also how people are shaped by society. Sociology helps us to understand a wide range of topics. For example, it helps us understand families, migration, work, social class. Really, most topics can be approached through a sociological lens. Sociology is particularly interested in the relationships between people, between individuals and society, and also in the ways in which society is organized. What sociology does is it connects the dots between private troubles and public issues. Sociology often starts with the issues that people face in their everyday lives. Think about pandemics, climate crisis, austerity, transformations and changes in the world of work, and also the role that digital technology plays in our lives. But sociology approaches these not as issues that are individual, but really as issues that need social analysis and solutions. Sociology gives us a different vocabulary than individualism. It helps us to see wider connections and the general qualities of personal experience. So, in that way, it helps us to understand private troubles as public issues. Some of the key themes in sociology you'd be studying are to look at inequalities and power relations between groups, for example, on the basis of gender, class, and ethnicity. In our modules, you would study examples of how the afterlives of colonialism affect contemporary societies through racism. You'd also be looking at how class differences shape people's access and use of digital technologies. and you'd be looking at how theories of racial capitalism can help understand the world of work. Another key theme in sociology is that of identities and differences of individuals and groups. So in our modules, you'd be studying, for example, how migrants find new ways of maintaining family relationships through digital media across distances. You'd be looking at how housework and care work shapes the relationships between genders, both in the global south and the global north, and how that may be different or similar as well. And sociology also helps us to understand the relationship between the state, institutions, and people. So, one of the things you'd be studying in our modules is how citizenship laws and borders shape the experiences of migrants, but also how do they shape the experiences of citizens. Another set of key themes in sociology is that of social practices. That is, how people do things with other people. So, one example you'd be studying in our modules is how new technologies have changed people's practices of health, well-being, and exercise. Another example is to look at how culture influences the ways in which people use the precious resource of water. And sociologists are also concerned with social action and activism. So some of the topics you'd be looking at in the modules is how independent trade unions or trade unions more generally have challenged 0 hours contracts. We'd be also looking at how social movements, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, have changed debates on racial inequalities in different countries. One of the things that students of sociology will learn is about theory and methods. That is how sociologists know what they know. Sociology develops knowledge based on evidence, and that can be through statistics and numbers, something you might have come across already, or through life stories, interviews, or focus groups, what we call qualitative methods. Sociologists use a wide range of well-established methods, but also innovative methods. Among the more established methods, for example, is the collecting of statistical evidence, and some newer methods would be analyzing social media or participatory theater, for example. You will learn about all this in your methods module. Sociologists are also at the forefront of developing theory that helps to understand the social world better. Our theory module looks at topics such as precarious work, racial capitalism, climate crisis, nationalism, culture, and many more. So, sociology matters not just as an academic subject, but it's a discipline that really explores the connections or the things that you experience in your everyday life. It looks at these through the lens of both the global and also the local. And in that way, sociologists address some of the most pressing challenges that contemporary societies face: climate change, changes in working lives, gender inequalities, conflict, war, and social cohesion. Sociologists can explain the underpinnings of social order and analyze also not just what stays the same, what keeps order, but also how social change happens. And that's something that's really important because sociology is a discipline that is interested not only in understanding the world, but also in making a difference to the social world. Sociologists can shape and inform policy for charities, institutions, and governments. That's one way in which sociology can make a difference. Sociological knowledge can also improve professional practice, for example, in the health services. And sociological research can be used for campaigning, whether in small grassroots groups or in larger social movements. So how do OU sociologists make a difference? One way is through their research. Topics that colleagues in the department are researching is: how do street markets contribute to a sense of community? How do refugees use mobile phones on their journeys and when settling into a new place? Does working in farming or in city jobs make a difference to the empowerment of women in the global south? How do war and conflict affect people's senses? And how has anti-racist activism since the 1970s shaped current social movements? Another topic that's our colleagues' research is how sociologists can effectively engage the public about health. Now, what's unique about OU sociology? OU sociologists have a really wide range of research and teaching expertise that you've already heard a little about. It's from cities to conflict, war, gender inequalities, working lives, racism, migration, digital technologies and society, health and society. And OU sociologists are committed to critical research and teaching that makes a difference. So alongside the events and seminars for your modules, you can also take part in a vibrant community of sociology students with online events that range from seminars to socials. I want to give you an example of some of the lively materials that we're using in our teaching.
I think one of the key qualities of a social scientist is to be curious. Curious to understand how the past influences the present, how different social phenomena around us relate to each other. Curious also to understand how knowledge is created. And you've learned about social and economic inequalities on this module, and they're all around us, right? You might have met and seen refugees fleeing war, not receiving the aid and support they deserve. You may have met people sleeping rough in the streets in the city you live in, not being able to pay rent. You may have joined the protest, be a woman protesting and like fighting for the right to access safe abortion and so on. All of these inequalities have their root causes, and it's important for us to be curious, to understand why certain inequalities, injustices materialize, persist, and so on. Curious people ask questions, curious people read, curious people observe the surroundings. All these things are things that a social scientist does. So it's really important to be curious, and I hope you too are curious.
So this was one example of our learning materials. What I think is unique about the Open University and studying sociology here is that you'll get really exciting multimedia and interactive teaching materials. And one of the things that I find particularly exciting is that we are able to produce teaching videos and audios where you can learn directly from the international experts in their field. So it goes beyond our team of sociologists in the department, but we also interview people who are experts in their field. OU study is flexible, it fits around your life, and students get tailor-made support, excellent in-depth feedback from associate lecturers, and all-round support from the student support team or all the way through disabilities team. And you can also become a part of the OU Student Union, connecting with a wide range of students from across the UK and internationally. So there's different sociology degrees at the Open University. One option is a BA Honours in Sociology. The other is BA Honours Social Sciences with Sociology. You can study criminology and sociology, and you can study social sciences. Finally, you can also study an open degree, which allows you to choose modules from across all different disciplines. Usually, a sociology degree, when you study it part-time, would be taking you 6 years, and full-time, you can also study full-time, and that takes 3 years. There is a time limit of 16 years, however. So each of the options, each of the degrees here gives you different options. I'll be giving just an example of what you would study if you were to choose a BA in sociology. Altogether, you need 360 credits, and in each stage, you'll be studying 120 credits. You start by studying introducing the social sciences, and the next module would be global challenges, social science in action. On level 2, you'd be taking a module on understanding digital societies and one on research methods, which is called social research, crime, justice, and society. On level 3, you'd be studying social theory, changing social worlds. And you could be undertaking a dissertation of your own, which is a research project of your own. If you decided to take any of the other degrees, you would be doing some of these modules that I have just mentioned, but you can also have more options. So key skills that sociology students learn are to communicate effectively in really different formats. It could be reports or presentations. You'd learn how to analyze data and evidence to make informed decisions. Really importantly, you'll be learning to think critically, to make sense of a wide range of evidence and knowledge. And you'd be learning how to apply evidence and critical thinking to solve social problems in the workplace and the social world. So all of these are really important skills for employment, volunteering, and life more generally. Among our OU social science students who graduated in 2021, 70% feel that they're utilizing what they learned during their studies in their current work. 88% find their current work meaningful, and 74% think that their current work fits with their future plans. In terms of employment, these are the areas that our graduates have gone into welfare professions, housing, teaching, managers, directors, senior officials, business and public service professions. However, it's really important that studying sociology at the Open University is not only about equipping you for employment. That's a really important part, but that's not the only part. Our students also learn skills that are really important in gaining confidence to get involved in volunteering, activism, public life. So, and all of this is something that we also value. Thank you very much. I'll be passing on the presentation now to Brian.
Hi everyone. So I'm an associate lecturer for the Open University and I've held that position now for 25 years. And so what I want to talk in this part of the presentation is, who we are and what we do in terms of Open University teaching. So just come down here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so in terms of I'll talking in terms of conventional university teaching. I suppose the most famous image of university is a lecture theatre and people going in to sit in a tiered lecture theatre with a dais and table at the front and blackboards or a projector. And sometimes in lecture halls you can have 100, 200, even some of the biggest would have 500 students. And so when you're doing a module, what we call a course at the Open University, it might run for 10 weeks, 12 weeks of a term time. And across that period, each week you might sit in 3 lectures. But each week, as you move along, the lecturer presenting the material will change. So I've done this here in this little diagram to say we have Manjot starting, then we have Vari, then we have Liz. So Manjot might start the lecture series and for the first week give 3 lectures on his chosen topic, which might be conflict and war. And then Vari might take over and talk about feminism in the second week, and so on through a series of lecturers. Sometimes they can lecture for 3 weeks. They might give 9 lectures, 3 a week, and then hand over to someone else. So that's the probably the most formal part of teaching and what people are used to. Now, the other side of conventional university teaching, of course, is you have a tutorial series. And these happen in much smaller groups. You'll go off to a tutorial room in the university and they can be small, like 10 to 16 students, maybe as much as 20, but around that size. But you only get 1 hour a week with the tutor. But the idea behind these is you get 1 tutor for the whole term time. So I've just put this at the bottom, say Jin's tutorial group, and you work in that tutorial group. And the advantage of tutorials obviously is it gives the students a chance to interact and talk with a teacher. And you'll be following the lecture series, and you'll be asking questions, and kind of exercises will be set. And that's basically the set. And the other role the tutor does is when the students come to handing in assignments, you can't imagine a poor lecturer having to mark 500 assignments. So the way it's packaged out is usually your tutor of your particular group will take their students' work in their essays and do the marking and feedback and assessment. And so that's a conventional university. Now, with the Open University, that structure's maintained. And I think, Umut's just done a lovely job of talking about the first of these is your lectures are replaced by, what the central academic module teams do. They're replaced by, I think, mainly weekly book chapters. You still get sent a set of books, 2 books on the module I teach. And in each book, there's a set of chapters written by different people, Kevin, Umut, Marie, and each week you will read a different chapter of the book, and those are your lectures. And then in addition, you've just kind of seen the modern materials. You'll get video, you'll get audio, you'll also have different ways of interacting with the computer these days. And I can see these extending with, artificial intelligence in the future, but you do get interactive exercises online. Meanwhile, your tutorials at the OU, that's where I come in, because you're put into a small tutorial group, usually about 20 students, and your tutorials are held online, just like this meeting here, online, like this one. And you can interact in these. So we use a system called Adobe Connect, where you can use your microphone, switch on the camera, you can interact in a small group. Some modern tutorials, I'm just going to say this, we don't present tutorials just in a one single tutor setting anymore. All tutorials usually have 2 tutors, and that's because we like to do the thing of one person watching the chat box. One tutor will handle questions in the chat box as people type them, and the other tutor will doing what I'm doing at the present, which is presenting. But the main thing about tutorials is also you can interact with peers. Now, beyond that, there's also online forums that tutors manage and look after. And these are, if you like, asynchronous forums where you can type a message and someone it will react to that. It can be a student, or it can be one of the teaching team, one of the tutors assigned to the module. And that's another way in which, if you like, you can interact in terms of tuition. And I would call that, instead of the module team who produces the courses, I would call that the tuition team. And so this is where, if you like, this is where ourselves as associate lecturers, if you want, tutors come in. Right, okay, so, oops, it's gone too far. Oh, I can't seem to. I've lost control.
Would you like me to go back?
Yes, I've seemed to have lost control there. Yes, that's fine. So on this particular one here, associate lecturers, another term for us is tutors. So basically, like students, we work from home. We don't have an office in the Open University. We work from home. We're assigned a small group of students, as I said, about 20, though some or most associate lecturers these days have more than one group. Sometimes we teach on different modules, like DD 102, DD 218, DD 318, and Sociology. And each tutorial group is assigned a tutor group forum where there's maybe only 20 students have access to that. Sorry, it's gone again.
Okay, I can
Yeah.
click you
Yeah.
through if you like. Would you like me to go?
Yes, please.
on?
It seems to be very sensitive to them. So, and one of the main things we do, of course, is mark and feedback on what's called your continuous assessments. Now, there's some assignments we don't do, and these are the end of module assessment, which is given over to a different assessment team. It's done by actual associate lecturers, but the key principle is that I wouldn't mark my own students for the end of module assessment. So you can see that makes sense. But otherwise, say on a typical module, you might have 5 essay assignments, just an example, and I, as the tutor, will mark and feedback on each of those over a period of about 8 months, which means what we're doing is we're taking your work from the early stages, reading it, interacting with it, correspondence tuition, it's really called, where if you think it's like writing letters to each other. So you send in an essay and I comment and feedback on that and I give it back to you. And then the idea is that you pick up on things and improve the next piece of work. So it's kind of cumulative that you're building that up. So I think, looking at the two different types of learning, what I'd like to point out is the central academics produce the module content, the videos and all the things online and the books. And the learning, if you like, you're learning from them as in a lecture. When it comes to associate lecturers, what I like to think is we're reading your work. So it's a two-way process. I like to say I'm learning from students. And what I'm learning from students is how they're understanding, how they're comprehending the module and what's going on. And then I can feedback on that over a series of assignments. And that's the kind of relationship, and that's where the associate lecturers come in. Yeah. If you can move to the next slide, Umut, which is the last one. It's just to say, well, what else do associate lecturers do and where do we fit in? So we help to manage your learning and give you academic support. So the reason we're here is mainly the academic support. So anything to do with the intellectual content side, the teaching, the assessment and the submissions, the assignments, anything to do that. One of the key things we do help with is if you need an extension, because lots of students have a deadline and then say, I can't manage that because I've been ill. Well, that would be our job to give the extension, and that's what students contact us to say. And we also help you progress, as I've noted on the module. We're giving advice on improving your submissions. That's a key part. And also we can refer you to other support teams. So we're often the first point of contact. Students think, hey, I need something or I need to know something. But it's not the associate lecturer's role to help. And what we therefore do is refer students to where they can get help. And usually that's the study support teams. And that's anything to do with, for example, finance, anything with finance in Open University, not the associate lecturers. So we refer you to the support team. Or it could be, example, they said the disability support team, these kind of different specialised services. We advise on study strategies, how to make the most of your precious time, because time is precious. And students are saying, oh, how do I fit this in? So I often talk to students about how they can make the best use of their time. And I will even say things like, yes, really for the assignment you're working on, you can just skip that bit of the chat or whatever and concentrate on these bits, because it's all about managing the time and say, well, what's the aim here? What are you trying to do? And we build study skills in academic literacies. Yeah. So while we're not 24/7 service, we're working from home, students contact us by email. I say that's the primary way that students contact us these days. But what happens with the email is then I will arrange an audio video contact. And again, it's changed. It's mainly done through online services these days. But the whole point is you can actually speak to someone for, we might say 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So you've got one-to-one contact. And that's a big part of being an associate lecturer. As I say, we're moving from a service that was called Skype to one that's called MS Teams, which is where we're recording this. And the vast majority of ALs work part-time. I work part-time for the OU. But many or most of us work for other higher education institutes. So I work at the University of Edinburgh, and my role there is what you might call a central academic. I write lectures, I present lectures. I'll be teaching a summer school next week of international students. So I do that kind of work elsewhere. Other colleagues I've known have worked in what you might call industry. They work for, well, they might work for Historic Scotland, which is a government-funded, history body, that kind of thing. But they work outside of the OU. So we have a wide range of skills amongst associate lecturers. So we're working for the Open University part-time. Most of us have teaching qualifications, and we focus our, if you like, continuing professional development on teaching. I have a PGCE and online teaching, and that's what we're another aspect of what we're interested in. And yes, we interact with students in tutorial groups, which spread the length and breadth of the UK and the Republic of Ireland. And then there are a few specialist ALs who have students overseas. The Open University has done that over for many years. So I have, had students from the Scilly Isles to the Shetland Isles through in one tutorial group. So that's really, I hope that has explained what we do. I think that's it, Umut. I think the next slide is just the thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. And can I pass on to Mark?
Just bear with me.
Would you like me to click through for now?
Yes, but I think I've lost the cursor,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Thank you. So hi, my name is Mark. I'm a senior advisor in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences student support team. So I'm going to be talking to you about what's it like to study at the Open University generally. So in terms of entry requirements, the type of qualifications at the Open University, what support you can get, the amount of time that you need to study, as well as sort of finance and sort of funding options as well. So in terms of the entry requirements, so the Open University has always been open to all. So anyone, regardless of their kind of academic background, can sort of study a degree. So that's why the vast majority of undergraduate qualifications, including our sociology, have no entry requirements. You may find as you go through, there's some courses and some modules may recommend previous study in terms of specific GCSEs and A levels, etc., or maybe kind of work experience within the subject area, but they do tend to be sort of more recommended. And like I said, virtually all the undergraduate qualifications at the Open University have no entry requirements. We do also offer access courses. Now, these are really handy if you wanted to kind of prepare for a degree. So if you wanted to sort of see what it's like to study, you still have to do like assignments, and you still have a tutor, and you still get a nice certificate at the end. But they're very good at just sort of preparing you for sort of studying at degree level. We do offer a range of these. The one most relevant to the sociology degrees probably would be the psychology, social science, and well-being. And there are also a series of free courses you can undertake via our kind of suite of programs via OpenLearn. These again sort of help prepare you for your studies. You can do subject-specific ones, for example, related to sociology, but equally you can do ones to sort of help develop your own sort of study skills as well. So there are a range of qualifications at the Open University. So I mentioned about the access and short courses. We do also have certificates of higher education, which are worth 120 credits. So that's almost like kind of 1/3 of a degree. Diplomas of higher education, 240 credits, which is like 2/3 of a degree. And also obviously the degrees, which we've spoken about. We do also offer postgraduate masters and PhDs. With those, they do tend to have kind of entry requirements, normally in terms of what you sort of achieved at undergraduate level. So Umut touched on this earlier on. So generally, you have the option of studying part-time or full-time. The important thing to say here is it's not kind of set in stone. So when you start your degree, say you start full-time, it does not mean you have to study full-time throughout your degree, because we appreciate that students' circumstances may change throughout. And obviously, as you get further onto your degree, the content does get a lot more sort of difficult. So you do have the option to kind of sort of flip between the two. So roughly part-time study, that's in terms of the amount of study time, you're kind of looking around sort of 16 to 18 hours a week. That can vary depending on the kind of module, and also I guess where you are sort of with the module as well, whether it's towards the end of the assessments or near the beginning, etc. You can also study full-time, which is 120 credits, and that's roughly around 32 to 36 hours a week. Again, that's just as a kind of sort of a rough guide. You can, as we mentioned earlier on, you can sort of you do have up to 16 years to sort of complete the degree, and you can also, kind of take study breaks in between if you have kind of particular circumstances, or you just sort of need to take a break in your studies. So in terms of the structure of a degree qualification, so as we said, there are 360 credits in total, and each stage of studies is made up of 120 credits each. All Open University undergraduate modules tend to be either 30 or 60 credit modules. With a sociology degree, this will consist of 60 credit modules. You can also claim what's called milestone qualifications along the way. So even before you've completed your degree, if you complete 120 credits, you can claim a certificate of higher education, and 240 credits, you can claim a diploma of higher education. So as a student at the Open University, you can access a range of support during your studies. So obviously you've got your individual tutor, associate lecturer. They can provide you support with, I guess, the more kind of academic content side of things. But anything else, do sort of get in touch with your kind of student support team. We are available, 5 days a week. You can contact us via phone, email, web chat, or you can even sort of schedule a sort of particular time for a call back as well. You will have a range of online module support and forums that you can access. That's a good way of communicating with other lecturers and other students. We have a fabulous careers team at the Open University. Once you're registered at the Open University, you can access free and impartial careers advice. We also have a disability support team. So if you have any disability, learning or health needs, and you feel you may need some additional support or adjustments in place, you can get in touch with us or the disability support team directly. We have lots of support around sort of mental health and well-being, both kind of online support, also apps that you can access, and we can also refer you to sort of mental health specialists as well. You have the Open University Library. There's also the Computing and IT, which you can access 24 hours a day. And we have OpenSU, recently changed its name to OpenSU, which is the Students' Union. And this includes a range of clubs and societies that you can join. So as was mentioned early on, it's not just about your degree. You can also, get involved with other kind of student activities like you can at any university, and join a range of online sort of clubs and societies. And it's a good way of sort of meeting students outside your own degree qualification. So as I said, the student support team, we really have a sort of first point of contact if you ever sort of need any sort of help with your studies, particularly things outside the kind of academic content. So examples of things that we can help with. We can support you on how to make the best start with your studies. We appreciate it can be quite daunting, sort of starting at a new university and working out how to kind of navigate your way around all the various systems. So we can certainly offer support in terms of how to give you the best start. If at any point through your studies you want to make change or slight tweaks to the kind of modules or qualifications you're doing, or you're planning to study, you can get in touch with us about that. We can also offer support with any sort of barriers to study, and signpost you to various support options available. We can also, make sort of direct referrals as well to specialist teams. We can talk about, as I mentioned earlier, extra arrangements or adjustments due to personal circumstances or disability health conditions. We can support you with planning your time for your study. On the OU website, there are a series of study planners which are really helpful in terms of sort of managing your time. And as I said early on, we can also refer and signpost for additional support, both internally and externally to the Open University. Thank you. So in terms of the cost of your studies, the main thing to say about studying at the Open University compared to other campus universities, you obviously save on costs such as travel and accommodation. And generally the fees are also cheaper overall compared to a sort of campus university. So the table below, this applies kind of specifically to sort of England. But you can see, based on the next academic year fees, an honours degree, you would save roughly sort of 18% of the fees. So that works out, one module of 60 credits will be £3,892 if you're based in England. Thank you. And if you start a 60 credit undergraduate module in the next academic year, you can see there the fees do sort of vary depending on where you live. What I would do is say is we do have a sort of designated fees team that you can also contact directly if you do need any sort of help or advice in terms of fees. There is also financial support that you can access to your studies. So you have the tuition fee loan, which you can use towards specifically the cost of the fees. Again, that might vary depending where you're living, but there should be sort of various schemes available. We have something called study-related costs. So this can help fund costs such as laptops, childcare, depending on your kind of sort of financial circumstances. If any of you ever experienced sort of severe financial hardship, you can also apply for something called the Student Assistance Fund. We do have disabled students allowance, so this is something that's run directly through Student Finance England. So that can provide additional support in relation to any disability, learning or health needs. So for example, it could fund a study mentor, or maybe kind of adjustments in terms of equipment or online literature. There is lots of information about fees and funding, which is available in that link below. And we do also have a dedicated fees team who you can also contact directly as well. So in terms of how to enroll, it's very simple. So the first thing to say is, yeah, you don't sort of apply via UCAS. You simply need to, first of all, register for an Open University account. Have a look at the courses you want to do, select your chosen course. Obviously, in the meantime, if you have any questions and need some advice about what's the best course for yourself, do sort of get in touch with us. Once you've chosen your course, you apply for your funding, and then you sort of register for your first module. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really informative. Thank you so much. Maybe just one thing that I should add is that you've seen that there are different fees for the different nations of the UK. The Open University is very unusual in that it is a 4 nations university, and the different fees are not decided as such by the Open University, but by the different governments in the national, in the UK nations. Just for those of you who might be curious why there should be different fees for people living in different places. So I'd like to really hear more from Dinah and Kate. Would you like to start telling us a little bit about your experience of being a student at the Open University?
Sure. So again, I'm Dinah, and I have just completed my bachelor's in social sciences with the Open University. If you couldn't guess from my accent, I'm not located in the United Kingdom. I'm in the United States, not for long, but so I've studied as an international student. I've been studying for the last 4 years to complete my degree. I was working at first, and I ended up studying full-time towards the end, and I'm a parent of a small child. So there are a lot of possibilities for flexibility within the Open University is a big part of what I discovered personally. One thing I've really discovered is that the capabilities of each individual as far as full-time versus part-time study, how much a person can handle based on the rest of their life or their personal needs, their mental health, etc., that can really vary. And I've seen a lot of people try to compare themselves to others, saying, oh, well, they're working full time and studying full time and they have kids at home. Why can't I study the same? And it's just because everyone's a little bit different. And for me personally, I started by studying part-time and working part-time. And at one point I tried to work part-time and study full-time, and it didn't work. And I just think that kind of flexibility is what made the Open University really work for me personally, and has allowed me to achieve this goal of my bachelor's, which I've been working for 20 years to achieve. So it's a huge deal for me, and it made it achievable in a way that I never had available to me. Specifically referring back to modules that I was taking, and the sociology modules in particular, honestly, there's a lot of variability in the modules themselves. There's a lot of topics being covered, and I feel like everybody who has any kind of interest in the workings of society, the workings of even individuals within society, will find topics that will speak to them, that will inspire them to delve deeper, and will allow them to find ways to make it personal to them, which I think is a big part of what drives further studies, further understandings, and just honestly empathy and compassion for the world around you. Something that sometimes feels lacking in a global world where we see so much that is not always positive. I really enjoyed some of my favorite modules in this social sciences course have been DD 218, the Understanding Digital Societies. I really got to delve deeply into the idea of how we present ourselves online, why and how, what that means to us, how we build social worlds within the internet, and how we stay connected to our roots, even if we aren't necessarily geographically close. It's very interesting and fascinating, and helped me to understand a lot about who I am personally as somebody who grew up in an online world. The internet came about as I was in my primary school years, and I grew up with it, and it evolved with me. And it's been really fascinating to look at it from a completely different perspective and how it affected the kind of person I developed into. And I think that can be a really fascinating way to look at our own world and our digital worlds through the experience of these Open University modules. Personally, my future plans are in social research. And so I did also take a social research module, which gave me such a really strong basis for understanding how to look at research and how to critically consider it. I feel like so often we're presented with statistics or, oh, look, this research study says XYZ. But if you actually look into it, you understand what their methodology was, what their sample size was, the applicability, and their processes. Maybe sometimes the conclusions don't always align with what the public are assuming. And it gives a much better way to, like a greater context for understanding what you're presented with and being capable of critically questioning what you're shown. And so those were those two were actually my level 2 modules. My level 3 modules I just completed this past year. And once you hit level 3, so that's your final year or 2 years, depending on if you're part-time or full-time. And that's sort of when you are given a lot more opportunity to stretch your wings and really pursue the topics that you are interested in. I mean, for me, big nerd that I am, I got to write about the coloniality of data, which fascinating to me. And I got to consider the ways that social theories make sense of the neurodivergent social world and community and how we perceive identity. And those are topics that are very much close to my heart. And as much work as it was to write my final assignments on very broad and very intense topics, I loved every minute of it because I really just got to dig into things that made me passionate. And I just had so much fun with that. And speaking of neurodivergence, I'm also diagnosed ADHD, PTSD, anxiety disorder, depressive disorder, kind of run the gamut on a lot of those standard disabilities, but they're all things that affected my ability to complete my degree. And that's part of why my lack of diagnosis and understanding of my own disabilities contributed to it taking 20 years for me to achieve a bachelor's. But once I understood, and then I was in an environment like the Open University where I could say, here's my information, these are my diagnoses, here's the paperwork, these are the types of accommodations that work for me. I was able to work with my tutors to communicate when there were difficulties and what were causing them. Especially with my ADHD. For me personally, a lot of my symptoms come in the form of executive dysfunction. It's very hard to motivate myself at times. And there are often no notable causes. It just sort of happens at times. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. And I've learned how to work with it, but it also was very helpful to be able to work with my tutors. And sometimes I would receive extensions on assignments. And yes, that could affect the ability to complete my next assignment or the time I had available to do that. But it was still about communication and understanding from my tutors. And that meant that they were capable of working with me to work with my capabilities at that time as a result of my disabilities. I still had to do all my work. I still had to get it in on a timeline, but sometimes that timeline was able to be a little bit more flexible, which made a huge difference to me personally.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. This is really, really great to hear. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Well done on your degree. Kate, would you like to share a bit about your experiences of being an OU
sure.
student?
Yeah, so similarly to Dinah, I also have some disabilities and things. I've got a whole bunch of different things as well. I've got autism and stuff like that. And so, yeah, much in the same way that it's taken Dinah quite a long time to, get to the point where I'm like, oh, I can do a degree. It's also, it's been a very long time for me as well. And I can't handle studying full time, like at all. So I'm taking the slow path. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it feels so slow, but actually it's, it's nice that you can tailor your studies to like what works for you in terms of like your energy levels, as you say, like your ability to cope with other things in your life. And there's nowhere else that's really that flexible from what I've seen. And the fact that you can also do it all from like home. So if you've got like issues with, getting places like I do, then, you have everything you need like at home and the nice like safe space. You can work on your study space, get it, so it accommodates you, so you can help accommodate yourself as much as possible, so you can then go forth and do all of the work. It's been a struggle at times, definitely, but over time you do find a way through with it. You find a path to being able to understand what's required of you and complete your assignments. So as you say, all these things about having conversations with your tutors. All my tutors have been really supportive. And they've even helped tailor feedback to me in a way that is beneficial to me. So if I maybe come at something from a slightly odd angle, a tutor's able to go to me, oh, right, I see what you've done here. You have actually answered the question, or maybe you haven't answered it, but they're able to go, like, I see what was going on here. I see what's happened. In the future, maybe you might want to do these things. So it's always an iterative process. You're always building yourself up bit by bit. It's kind of, you're getting to the end, like sometimes, one little step at a time, and that's fine. And because you will get there in the end. So I've been really enjoying myself. I still got like quite a lot of time to go with my one, so I've yet to get to level 3. So I don't quite know for me in my bit level 3 holds, because it's different to your one, but we shall see. But yeah, so your experience does sound really lovely. I have actually been watching Dinah studying sociology from over where I am in psychology, like, oh, attempting to go over it because it is an exciting subject. Every time I've read everything into it, it's like you could just sort of get a bit lost in it, really. So yeah, absolutely. That's been my experience. Just a good time, basically.
Thank you so much, Kate and Dinah. This is really, really interesting to hear and really great to also see your success. And that's wonderful. Do you have any tips that you would give to someone who's considering to study at the OU?
I do have a few. I would say the first thing, more than anything else, is to be very honest with yourself about your capacity, what you're capable of handling at a time. It's okay not to be at the same capacity as other people. So if you can only do one module at a time, that's fine. That's wonderful. That's still amazing. That's still progress.
Yeah.
And the hardest time I had at the OU was when I was not honest with myself about my capacity, and I ended up having to defer a module by a year because I just could not handle what I was putting onto my own plate. Another big piece of advice that I certainly learned the hard way as well is that it can feel very emotionally draining sometimes to read your feedback on your assignments. And it can be very hard to read it because more often than not, you've put a lot of time and energy into writing your papers, creating your presentations, whatever your assignment was. And the feedback you're receiving, and it again, this is not something that is natural to do, but it's not personal. The feedback's not personal. The feedback is very much meant to provide you with the steps and the direction to make improvements in your academic career. And it can be very difficult to look at it from that outside perspective and not take it personally, like, oh, well, I obviously suck at writing essays, so maybe I'll just give up. But don't give up. You might get a low mark or 2 or 3, but those early assignments are often weighted lower than your later assignments, where you've had the benefit of feedback on those earlier lower weighted assignments to make those improvements and to make those changes and to find the way to understand. And honestly, a lot of it for me is understanding how to think through certain processes. And I did in my level 1s, I took one sociology module and one psychology module. And that was so much more difficult to do the psychology. Throughout the whole module, I really struggled to understand how I had to think through the questions, think through the assignments. And frankly, psychology just wasn't for me personally.
It's where we diverged. It's the splitting point that was. I stayed with it, but yeah.
And I discovered in that term that my brain is a sociology brain, and it has been wonderful. It's been so fun, and a lot of the theories and approaches to sociology worked with how I already thought about things. But at the same time, I still had to learn each module what was being expected of me. And I would often have those lower marks at the beginning of the term while I was figuring that out. And as a perfectionist, that was very hard for me to work through. But coming to a place of acceptance about that is a huge piece of advice that I have for students. The perfectionism is not necessary. You can still do amazing. I've so far had the distinctions across the board, and I've really struggled sometimes. And I've had assignments that had really low marks, but I still earned a distinction. And not to toot my own horn, but it's possible. And don't give up is, I guess, the advice in that regard.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely wonderful. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Dinah. Any advice from you, Kate?
Yeah, I think that was really wonderful. I think it was also very true. And yeah, your grades tend to, they will, the OU gives you a chance to iterate and improve on your grades over time. So I think all of that's amazing. I think my bit of advice would be, if you have any kind of issue at all, doesn't matter what it is, I would say access support early. Look into things that can help you to study early and to interact with things like student support and disabled student services. Get you set up as good as you can possibly get, like set yourself up for success in that way, and discover, as you go through your first module, like it's about experimenting, really. It's about discovering how you learn best, how you work best, and working with all of those little things together for you so that you can take that forward and build on the momentum. Because to begin with, it's about getting the momentum rolling, because once you've got it, you've got it. And even when things get really tough and you're really tired and you're like, I can't write another word, you'll find you'll be able to write another word. So that really, I suppose, yeah, just access support as early as possible. It's okay to do that.
And actually, I have one more. Attend tutorials.
Bonus
Don't
round.
skip out on tutorials.
Yes, attend to tutorials, 100%.
It makes such a
Absolutely.
difference.
It does. And like, talk to your tutors. Remember that they're people and they're actually really interested in the things that you're learning, and they're actually massive nerds about it. Yeah. And that's a lot of fun. So yeah.
Yeah, I've found that attending tutorials and joining the informal, unofficial WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups allows you to not feel so alone, because studying remotely, you can feel very alone, very isolated. But finding those ways to have that community, for me personally, and I know not everyone will be the same, but for me personally, that's it. There were moments where that was the only thing that pulled me through. And when I was really struggling, there were times where just communicating that with other students who were feeling similarly and knowing that we could communicate and that we were in the same place made such a difference. So being active, being in those tutorials and being in the chat, being in WhatsApp groups, they make such a difference in feeling connected.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. So we'll end the recording here. Thank you very much.